Okay, welcome to this week's shooting show. We're at home in South Asia, stalking roebucks early in the season on a Forestry Commission block. Hope you enjoy. Okay, this week we're at home in South Asia. I thought it's worth just covering a little bit about the rationale and the logic behind what we're actually trying to do and what we're actually trying to shoot and why, because it isn't just a matter of going out and shooting a deer. I mean, we're fairly early in the roebuck season, and depending on the ground and how I'm managing it, which is driven by the landowner or the agent or the forest managers or whatever, kind of dictates what I need to do in terms of the deer on there. Now, this is a piece of FLS, Forestry Commission in old money, that I manage on their behalf, so we're fairly regimented in what we can and cannot do, and essentially they want deer controlling fairly severely because there is some felling and a restock, replanting schedule already happening, felling going on now, and then there's a phased progression of that throughout probably the next 6-7 years. There's a lot of timber now coming out of Ayrshire and Galloway. So I don't have a lot of flexibility in what I do in terms of deer. That said, I still manage them ethically where I can, and in the early part of the season it's always a good idea to take the younger bucks in preference over the older bucks. It's nothing to do with trophy hunting or preserving big animals with big heads on, but it's all about, reducing damage. Young bucks will do more damage than old bucks. Old bucks to a degree will keep an area clear of a lot of youngsters, interlopers. Young bucks, however, will come into the territory when the old boy's not around, and they'll be fraying and marking and scratching. So on young trees that causes a lot more damage than the old boy. So given I'm in a scenario where I've got an older deer and a younger deer, I'll shoot the younger deer, and that's why. Nothing to do with preserving a head. On my own ground to a degree, where I'm not sort of restricted by that regime, I would still leave the older boy for exactly the same reasons, the damage scenario, and also it's keeping a healthy stock going through a balanced population. So this morning we were on a multitasking. Essentially I got the Argo cat with me because I wanted to relocate some boxes to protect one of these vulnerable sites. And then we thought, well, we'll do a stalk as well. If we're going in there, we might as well go in early, get a stalk in, try and shoot a deer, and then we'll go and move the boxes. However, as you will see, trundling along the track, 2 fallen trees right across the track kind of stopped plan A, so plan B had to hastily be worked. plan B was hastily arrived at. That's military training, by the way. You know, genuine civilians would have struggle with that, but I can do that instantly. So we left the machine, not a lot of choice, and I stalked along the track. The wind was quite good, coming from up the valley, and below us was quite a large basin, a good open area. It was quite favoured by deer, so kind of went along the track, stalked down one of the big glens. I thought I might see some deer in there actually, but we didn't. Came down across the bottom, across the stream into a lovely basin. Cold morning, quite a bit of frost about, and did quite quickly get into, once we got into the bottom of the valley, got into a row feeding on the edge of a block. So I watched her for a little while. Generally speaking, probably a good chance of there being another deer or a young buck with her, but nothing there. So we kind of, she alerted to us after a while and bounced off, not doing a lot of damage. So basically continued. And then got into, not that far beyond her, another couple of row feeding up above us on the edge of another block, probably about 350, 400 yards away at that point, and didn't identify the first one initially. The second one clearly was a young buck, bang on the deer I wanted to shoot. Absolutely no approach from where we were. It was quite calm and we'd been really in the open. So backtracked and actually went through the trees with large conifers. Often once you get through that initial canopy, it's quite open and you can move quite silently through it because it's a carpet of pine needles. And that allowed me basically to do a big kind of circular loop and come up effectively below them, using the trees to get closer. And then in front of us was a nice kind of ridge, so once I got behind that, I'd basically crawl across effectively the meadow and get the bipod set on top of the ridge, which gave me, you know, I don't know what it was, probably 170 off the bipod, quite a reasonable shot. And then it was just a matter of waiting for the deer to turn broadside. so kind of took the shot. I didn't see any reaction initially, didn't really hear a proper strike, so deer kind of shot off all in one kind of movement, so I really wasn't 100% certain that I'd hit it, to be honest, and it didn't kind of react as though it had been. It just shot off kind of left, and then when we got up to the area that it was in, there wasn't initially much evidence of any strike, so I let the dog sort of work slowly in front of me and then worked in the direction that it had run, which essentially was down the forestry edge tree line, and she picked up fairly quickly thereafter a really good blood trail, you know, bright blood, arterial blood, so I know the deer's perfectly hit, shouldn't be far, but still managed to run, I mean downhill admittedly, but still I think it probably made about 40 or 50 yards and dropped dead in like a little old planting furrow. Incredibly difficult. I mean, you would think a young buck like that, not aware of us, totally relaxed, bump, you would think would probably 5 yards at most, they just drop on the spot, but you never know with these things, absolutely never know, and you've always got to check even when you think you haven't hit it. Okay, I've got a young buck. I'm just going to do a cursory look at him. Quite a tricky stalk really, because it's quite a bit of open ground here. We did have the sun behind us, but we couldn't get anywhere to get in to get sort of close enough, so we basically had to bob into the tree line and work into the trees and then come up and get up behind a mound at the back of there, and they were feeding quite happily. So right at the start of the buck season, nice little cull buck, early season shot. I went for low neck, slightly low actually, and there wasn't a lot of reaction. I didn't see a lot of reaction, but clearly it was hit because just sort of come round and then come along the fence line. I was looking, really getting ready to take a second shot, but then he just kind of kicked down in one of these mounds and I saw the legs flail, so I knew he was dead. So just fairly careful follow up, because I wasn't 100% certain just what had happened, but he's died out within a few seconds really, bled out. Quite a big blood trail running down from the fence line to here. Nice young buck, good condition. Nice bright eyes. He's bled out through the neck, base of the neck. So we'll get him growlicked and super nick. That condition, really good condition. The deer this year had a pretty good winter, even though we had a lot of cold weather. It doesn't really bother them. They've got a lot of shelter here, a lot of food, pretty much everything they need. Various ages of tree, from mature stuff to felled to restock, all in front of us here, and then they can come out onto this, what is essentially pasture. This time of year they're feeding a lot on the rushes. The fresh growth in the rushes must have a lot of nutrient in it, and they do seem to be nibbling the young stuff off. It's just this time of year where I see them do that. When the rushes get on, they don't seem to bother with them, but while they're kind of flushing, it's got that kind of, it's almost like a polystyrene material within the rush. They seem to like that, and they were clearly feeding in this patch on here. So if I'll walk back to the car, we had intended this morning to bring the Argo cat in. We wanted to check some of the boxes on the far side, but as you'll see, there are 3 or 4 trees down across the road after the recent heavy storms, and that's kind of scuppered that plan. Okay, can usually manage to engineer a decent branch. This is a nice height. I like to have them just hung up just above head height, so I've got a nice working height. Zosh's nicely got a leg. I tend to hock the deer first, put the S-ups in and then get them hung. Nice and wide, then lets you get into the pelvic area, so I can skin the penis back. First thing, bleed the animal. Start the cooling process. This deer has bled out massively because of a low neck shot. There'll still be some in there, so just get that out, let that drain out. I'm going to take the front legs off now and then just go through the suspended growlet really. I do the examination as I'm working through it. And clearly see we've got a healthy young buck. There's nothing really at this stage that I'm 99.99% sure that everything inside this carcass is going to be fine. I mean, I'm going to do a full growlock on it, head and everything off, because it can then go into the row sack. So really from now it won't touch the floor, into a clean row sack and be carried back to the vehicle. I hold the intestines in with my left hand as I'm working down. Some people prefer just to open the chest cavity before opening the stomach area, which holds everything in naturally, but I kind of like to do it this way. See everything then as I'm working down. Knife onto the breastbone, and then I'm just going to work right down to the bleed hole, free the fur off and the skin, down to the bleed hole, and then basically I'm going to open that up. Look at the kidneys now while I'm here. See the spleen, nice and plum coloured, sitting looking at me. And then the liver as well, I can see the portal lymph node is just there, I can see as I'm already working through. So there's quite a bit of the examination done straight away, nice and easy, because you're looking at it. I'm just going to cut the pelvic bone. Yeah, that crack has gone through. So that's done with the bone saw. It's going to free off around the anus. Then finger pressure, lift the anus up. Take that right back, and I'm going to clear that with a little V cut. Bring that forward. And then really there's nothing holding anything in here, so Zosha gets the kidneys as always. No table manners, dog. I'm really just freeing off the diaphragm skirt. Let gravity take its course. And there's the growler done. And then it was a bit of a long carry then, unfortunately, so that keeps you fit. So basically, apex predator row sack into the bag and then out and up the glen, and then we could come back into the back of the truck. So mission accomplished. The first part of the mission accomplished. The second part of the mission needed to wait for forestry to come and clear the track for us to get in and relocate our boxes. So breakfast time. Okay folks, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always to the sponsors, and remember to do the usual on social media and all the rest of that malarkey. But if you're not a member of BASC, it's time to join. Looking after your future, looking after you. That's it for this week.